Marty's destination is on the other side of the deadly peaks, and there's only one way across.
There's one pass I have to try and get through.
He has no choice but to push forward.
I can't turn around without hitting the other side of the valley. That's a dead man situation there.
Marty Meierotto, the tough-as-nails trapper from the History Channel's hit series Mountain Men, became one of the most admired survivalists on TV. Known for his grit, calm under pressure, and deep love for Alaska's wild frontier, he showed viewers what real self-reliance looked like. But when Marty suddenly vanished from the show in 2019, everything changed. Rumors spread fast. Stories of tragedy, death, and lost fortune filled the internet. Yet the truth behind his disappearance was far more personal. Join us as we explore what really happened to Marty Meierotto.
It's just all hard ice. It's gonna rattle like crazy. It's hard on the skis. There's a pretty high possibility that it can damage the plane. And if I damage the plane to the point where I can't fly it, then I'm stuck.
For almost 10 years, Marty was one of the faces people instantly recognized on Mountain Men. His routine was constant, flying supplies to his cabin, running his trap lines, and pushing through those long, brutal winters. That rhythm was what made viewers connect with him. Nothing about it felt staged, because it wasn't. By 2019, 8 seasons had come and gone. His story was still about surviving, working hard, and keeping things honest out in the middle of nowhere. But something had shifted inside him. In his final episode, he stood outside his cabin with the Alaska wilderness stretching out behind him. He talked about the life he'd built, simple, quiet, and entirely his own, saying that even with cameras constantly on him, he's still just a trapper at heart. It wasn't announced as a goodbye, but anyone watching could feel it. He was done. The History Channel eventually confirmed what fans had already guessed. Marty decided to step away after season 8. He missed being home, just spending normal days with his wife Dominique and their daughter Noah. He wanted the simple stuff back, quiet mornings, family, and peace without a film crew following him around. There wasn't any big goodbye or speech. He just made the call and walked away. Marty didn't issue a public statement or return for interviews after his final episode aired. Instead, he quietly stepped away from television altogether. For Marty, it was never about being famous or chasing attention. He just wanted to show a life that was real, the kind that's slowly disappearing. Leaving Mountain Men closed one chapter, but it didn't end his story. Once the cameras were gone, he went right back to where he'd always felt at home, the Alaskan wilderness. In the months that followed, his absence began to raise questions online. With no official updates or appearances, misinformation soon took hold, and a false story about his fate began to spread. After Marty's quiet departure from Mountain Men, updates about him stopped completely. There were no new interviews, no social media posts, and no public appearances. For a man who had spent years living under the camera's eye, his sudden absence was quickly noticed. It didn't take long before that silence turned into stories, and many of them weren't true. It started with small posts on Facebook, the kind that spread quickly in fan groups. Some claimed Marty had died in a plane crash while flying over the Yukon. Others repeated an old story about a near miss during filming and presented it as something recent. Those stories, taken out of context, fueled the idea that something terrible had happened. None of it was true. Marty was alive and well. As later confirmed by outlets covering the show, he was alive and living quietly with his family in Two Rivers, Alaska. The reason no one had heard from him was simple. He preferred it that way. Marty had never been active online, and once his time on television ended, he returned to the life he'd always wanted, stable and out of reach from public noise. Even so, the rumor spread far enough that some fans still believed it months later. It showed how deeply his story had connected with people. Viewers weren't used to seeing someone walk away so completely. In a time when most reality stars build brands, Marty did the opposite. Eventually, the false reports faded, but the rumors weren't the only challenge Marty had faced. For years, even while he was still on the show, he'd been fighting a different kind of battle, one that attacked not just his reputation, but his entire way of life. Marty's way of life has always been built around trapping, and that's where most of the controversy began. From his first appearance on Mountain Men, animal rights groups criticized the show for showing him setting steel traps and skinning animals for fur. To them, it wasn't a survival skill, it was cruelty. They argued that in today's world where synthetic materials exist, trapping was unnecessary and outdated. As the show gained popularity, those criticisms grew louder. Social media pages began urging viewers to boycott the series, saying it glorified animal suffering for entertainment. Some campaigns even targeted Marty directly. using clips from mountain men as examples of what they called inhumane practices. For a while, his name became a talking point in online debates about traditional hunting and conservation ethics. Marty never answered his critics publicly. For Marty, the work remained the same. Everything he did followed state guidelines and reflected Alaska's long-standing traditions of outdoor survival and resource management. Trappers in the region operate under clearly defined seasons and approved methods established by wildlife authorities. To Marty, those rules mattered. He wasn't trapping for sport. He was living the same way people in Alaska have lived for generations. Some questioned the practice, while others noted that when done responsibly, it helps maintain healthy animal populations, reduces disease risks, and supports local ecosystems. Some reminded critics that out there, trapping isn't just tradition, it's survival. It puts food on the table and provides clothing when there aren't many other options. No legal action or violations have ever been reported against him. His trapping has remained within Alaska's guidelines, and by all public accounts, his methods have always complied with state law. For Marty, the noise never changed his routine. He kept living the same way he always had, trapping, hunting, and staying off the radar in the Yukon Flats. To him, it wasn't about defending a pastime or proving a point, it was simply life. He was continuing a heritage. Years later, he would address these criticisms directly, explaining the balance between tradition and conservation. But between constant public attacks and decades of dangerous work, Marty made another decision. Long before mountain men made him a familiar face, Marty Meierotto was already out there living a story most people couldn't imagine. Back in the late 90s, Marty signed up for smoke jumping, one of those jobs most people wouldn't even think about doing. The job was simple: jump out of a plane, land near a wildfire, and try to stop it before it spreads. Sometimes they'd drop miles from any road, cut off from help, surrounded by smoke and heat. The work was rough, exhausting, and honestly pretty scary. But to Marty, that was the attraction. He joined the Bureau of Land Management's Alaska Smoke Jumpers, fresh out of his 20s and eager to prove himself. For more than 30 years, he dropped from planes into walls of smoke, carrying only an axe, a shovel, and a backpack stuffed with a few days' supplies. The land didn't forgive mistakes. One wrong step could mean injury or worse. Even with everything the job threw at him, Marty kept coming back year after year. There was something about pushing himself against the wild that kept him hooked, the same drive people would later see on Mountain Men. When things went wrong, which they often did, he stayed cool and handled it. When the fire was out, he packed up his gear and got ready for whatever came next. That quiet focus earned him real respect among the Alaska crews. The kind you don't ask for, you just earn. After more than 3 decades, though, the years started to weigh on him. Smoke jumping is a young person's game, and by 2019, Marty knew it was time. According to reports, he retired that July after 31 years of service, an extraordinary run in a career where most people last fewer than 10. In typical Marty fashion, he didn't make a big deal out of it. No speeches, no farewell tour. He just packed up his gear, said a quiet goodbye to the hangar in Fairbanks, and headed home. For Marty, retirement didn't mean slowing down. It meant reclaiming time. After decades of leaping into danger, he was ready for something different to focus on the life he'd built in Alaska. The cabin, his family, and the kind of steady work that didn't come with sirens or smoke. But that decision had been building for a while. 2 years earlier, something had happened that planted the seed. A loss that would change how Marty looked at everything. Back in 2017, 2 years before Marty would retire from smoke jumping, the Mountain Men family went through something no one was ready for. Preston Roberts, one of Marty's closest friends on the show, died at the age of 60. Doctors had found a tumor on his liver, but it was too deep to remove. The cancer spread faster than anyone expected. 1 month he was out working on his land, the next he was gone. It all happened so fast that most people didn't know what to say. Preston wasn't just another face on the show. He was the heart of it all, calm, wise, and quietly dependable. He had been friends with Marty long before cameras arrived, teaching, building, and living by the same code the series celebrated. He was the kind of man who helped before you asked, who made hard work look simple. Marty felt that loss deeply. They lived thousands of miles apart, but guys like them just get each other. Same work ethic, same respect for the land, same belief that a man should earn what he keeps. When Preston passed, the Mountain Men crew and History Channel stepped in to honor him. Marty co-led a fundraiser to finish the home Preston had been building before he got sick. In about 5 weeks, donations topped $100,000. Marty supported the cause and spoke about Preston publicly, calling him a true friend, a man who lived with real purpose. For Marty, that loss changed things. He wasn't someone who talked much about emotion, but losing a man like Preston makes you think. About time, about what you're doing with yours, about the people waiting when you come home. That loss, the controversies, the decades of dangerous work, it all added up to his decision to step away. And he stayed gone for a while. After 5 years out of the spotlight, Marty Meierotto surprised everyone. In 2024, he came back to Mountain Men. For fans who'd followed his story since the early days, it was hard to believe. Marty had left in 2019 with no plans to return, so what changed his mind? He came back for season 13, and this time he wasn't alone. His daughter Noah joined him. This time around, it wasn't about money or fame. Marty had spent the years off raising Noah, teaching her everything he knew. Now that she was older, he wanted to share that part of his life, the one built around family, not cameras. This wasn't the same reserved man viewers remembered from 2019. He looked more relaxed, more at ease. Years of quiet living had grounded him even further. He wasn't proving anything anymore. He was sharing what he'd built. The difference was clear in every episode. Noah was part of it, working alongside him with the same confidence viewers had seen developing. Viewers could see the transition happening in real time, the teacher slowly stepping back as the student came into her own. Then came season 14 in 2025, which premiered in September. It was Mountain Men veteran Tom Moore's final season, but Marty's segments stood out. His parts focused on caribou hunting, checking wildfire damage across Alaska, and mentoring Noah through each step. The episodes aired through October, and by the end, one thing was clear. Marty wasn't just back, he was thriving. Fans welcomed the return. It felt genuine, not forced. He hadn't come back to cash in or reclaim attention. He'd simply found a balance sharing Alaska, preserving his traditions, and spending time with his daughter while letting the world watch again. His reappearance also ended the rumors that had floated online for years. Marty Meierotto was alive, healthy, and still doing exactly what he'd always done, living life on his own terms, deep in the Alaskan wild. But what exactly was Marty doing during those 5 years away? What made him come back feeling so different, so grounded? The answer lay in how he'd spent that time. One of the best things to come out of Marty Meierotto's time away from television has been the chance to raise and mentor his daughter, Noah Jane Meierotto. Noah was born around 2006 and pretty much grew up the same way her dad did. By her teens, she could already do things that had stopped most adults in their tracks. Flying a small bush plane, pitching camp from scratch, running trap lines. She just knew how to handle herself out there. During his break from Mountain Men, Marty made Noah his main focus. The two spent countless days together running trap lines, repairing equipment, and navigating miles of frozen terrain. No cameras, no production crews, just father and daughter working side by side, learning from the land and from each other. Marty has said more than once that teaching Noah is his proudest accomplishment, more meaningful than television, money, or fame. Passing down what he's learned is his real legacy. It's what his own father did for him, and now he's doing the same for her. By her late teens, Noah had started making her own mark. She competed in rifle sports and even won a local track competition in 2023. She's also active on Instagram, where she shares photos from flights, hunts, and the quiet moments of life in the Alaskan wild. Fans notice that she's every bit as capable as her father, calm, skilled, and at ease in the elements. She finished high school in 2025. She doesn't post much about her private life and seems more focused on family, the outdoors, and keeping that Meierotto lifestyle going. And for Marty, that's the whole point. Those years away gave him exactly what he'd hoped for: uninterrupted time with Noah and making sure those old Alaskan ways don't disappear when he's done living them. But teaching Noah in person wasn't the only way Marty worked to preserve his legacy during those years away. In 2020, Marty Meierotto finally put his story on paper. He released a book called In the Land of Wilderness: The Writings of Marty Meierotto, a 322-page collection of 30 short pieces about his life in Alaska. It was published by the Alaska Trappers Association, a fitting tribute to the community he'd always called home. The book isn't what you'd call dramatic or polished, it reads like him, plain-spoken and honest. One story might be about fixing a plane that went down in deep snow. Another talks about a grizzly wandering a little too close for comfort. Others follow long trapline runs, sudden storms, or nights when the only sound was wind across the trees. Some of the stories even make you laugh, the kind of humor that comes from living rough but loving it anyway. It's the same mix of grit and humility that people loved him for on Mountain Men. Readers appreciated that tone right away. On Goodreads, it sits at around 4.5 stars. People called it an easy, engaging read, and said it felt like listening to Marty tell stories around a fire, No ego, no show, just the truth. He also used a few chapters to explain his side of the trapping debate, not to argue, but to show why he believes it's necessary when done responsibly. He laid out Alaska's rules, the seasons, and the balance between animals and people who depend on them. It wasn't about defending himself, it was about explaining a way of life. Marty didn't promote the book much. No interviews, no press events, no tour. Just quiet word of mouth through the trapping community. By 2025, it was still selling steadily, especially among outdoorsmen and fans who missed him on television. In a way, the memoir did exactly what he wanted it to do: tell the truth about the life he chose without cameras or edits. Just him, the words, and the land that shaped them. And then, something unexpected happened. Between teaching Noah, writing his book, and eventually returning to mountain men on his own terms, Marty had rebuilt his life exactly the way he wanted it. As of October 2025, Marty Meierotto is doing just fine. He's 59 now, still living the life he's always known in Two Rivers, Alaska, alongside his wife and their daughter. The Meierottos haven't changed much since leaving the spotlight. They still live mostly off-grid, relying on the same routines Marty's followed for decades. His days start early. He traps, checks lines, and flies his old Piper Super Cub across the Yukon flats. The rhythm of that life, hard work, cold air, and quiet is what keeps him grounded. For Marty, this isn't retirement. It's just a return to normal. Also, he's in a good place financially. Estimates put his net worth somewhere between $150,000 and $500,000. Money built over decades of smoke jumping, television work, and book sales. But he's never been one to chase wealth. Marty's philosophy has always been the same: spend on what you need, fix what you can, and live within your means. His marriage to Dominique remains solid. She's been with Marty since way before mountain men was ever a thing. She didn't grow up in Alaska, but she learned it piece by piece, left a comfortable life behind, and figured out how to handle winters that last forever, small cabins, and a whole lot of quiet. Through the smoke jumping years, the flying, even the pressure from filming, she stayed right there beside him. Over the years, they made a life that just works. Nothing fancy, nothing loud. Marty stays off the internet. He has an Instagram page that hasn't been active since 2020. Every once in a while, someone spots him on a podcast or speaking at a trapping meet, but that's rare. His book and the occasional episode of Mountain Men say enough. Fans still post about him on social media platforms, sharing sightings or old clips, but Marty himself stays out of the noise. The trapping debates still pop up now and then, but they don't shake him. He believes in what he does and follows every rule Alaska's game laws require. For him, it's never been about proving a point. It's about caring for the land itself, managing wildlife populations, preventing disease, and keeping nature in balance. To him, that's work that truly matters. Noah, now in her early 20s, continues to grow into her own. Whether she stays on Mountain Men or chooses a quieter path, she's already carrying the legacy forward: the skills, the self-reliance, the respect for the wild.